It's not an easy thing to try to get a toehold in a different tradition, especially
It's
when
not
you
that
don't even have
hard.
a toehold in your own.
It's not that hard, especially for an educated person. You're obviously a highly educated person. It's not that hard. Islam, one of the things Gibbon said is that Islam spread because it was a very easy religion to understand. So this idea that I can't understand it, I'm having a hard time, it's not that hard to understand. I mean, Islam is actually very straightforward.
Okay, then give me a 5-minute summary of the core beliefs. I don't want to put you on the spot. It's not a question.
That's not hard at all.
So lay it out. That would be very helpful.
So we have a famous hadith in which we're told that the angel Gabriel came in the form of a man and asked the prophet, "Tell me about faith." And the Prophet Muhammad said, "Faith is to believe that there's only one God, and that Muhammad, which includes all the previous messengers, is a messenger of God, to believe in angels, to believe in the books that God has revealed, to believe in the last day, the day of judgment, and to believe in the measuring out of good and evil, that good and evil is part of life." And then he said, "Tell me about Islam." And he said, "Islam is that you make the testimony of faith, that you pray 5 times a day, that you fast Ramadan, that you pay zakat, the 2.5% of your standing wealth at the end, not your income tax, but your standing wealth at the end of a year, that's a whole year, 1/40th is given to poor people. There's 8 categories that are given in the Quran. And that you, if you're able to, you make a pilgrimage once in your lifetime to Mecca." And then he said, "Tell me about ihsan, which is the 3rd dimension of Islam." And he said, "And this is the dimension of virtuous being, like being a person of arity, of excellence in the world." And he said, "Ihsan is to worship God as if you see God. And if you don't see him, at least you know that he sees you. So you have an awareness of that there is a divine presence, and you should be in a state of awareness in your behavior." I mean, one of the things about, if you're driving and everybody's speeding and then somebody sees a cop, they all suddenly slow down. I have a friend once who just zoomed past the cop when everybody slowed down, and he pulled him over. And he said, "Why didn't you slow down?" He said, "I felt like a hypocrite." So the guy, he let him go. But, that's people when they're in the presence of authority, they tend to behave well, unless they're an utter rebel. I mean, there are those people.
I'm trying to figure out how to be a Jew and a Christian and a Muslim at the same time.
But become Muslim, that's the best way, because the beauty of Islam is you get the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Last Testament. I mean, that really is, for me, even the Jews acknowledge this, because Islam in many ways is a universalized Judaism. It's Judaism for the Gentiles. We have the mikvah, they do ghusl, we have ghusl. I mean, which is the ritual, the baptism, a total immersion in water ritually to purify yourself, which is done at least once a week. And
okay, so let me ask you, maybe I'll ask you, because we're going to run out of time. I want to ask you a final question, then you can maybe help me in my aim. I've been trying to understand the Christian doctrine of the Word and its relationship to the Jewish prophetic tradition for a long time, and I know that Christ is a central figure in Islam as well. I mean, the Christians make the claim that Christ is the Son of God, right? He's the Messiah himself, and it's very difficult, if you're going to be a Christian, not to accept that claim. And I think I understand the claim in some sense psychologically. I mean, I think the notion that the free word, the free truthful word, is the fundamental redeeming force. I believe that's true. I think it's true literally, and I think it's true metaphorically, and I suspect it might be true religiously, although I'm not exactly sure what that means. And I think part of the stumbling block for me in relationship to Islam, I can understand Christianity in relationship to Judaism, but I can't understand Islam in relationship to Christ, because I understand the Christian idea that Christ was what would you say, a transcendent consequence of the prophetic tradition and the Christian insistence that his life is associated with the divinity of the Word, and that is in some sense a final statement. And so I don't understand how Islam moves beyond that and still places Christ in a place of centrality.
Well, I mean, the Jews don't accept Christ at all. Like the best of the Jews will say he was a rabbi, but many of the rabbis considered him to be a charlatan, a magician. And Jesus in the Talmud, which was printed by Princeton University Press, makes that argument that the Talmudic views of Christ, which he argues in that book that it was understandable given that the Jews were so persecuted by the Christians. But the Muslim theology is I think it's a radical monotheism that even I think it transcends the monotheism of Judaism, which has some anthropomorphic elements in it that the Muslims would not accept. But generally, the Jews and the Christians agree on the theology. Rabbis, I've had many talks with rabbis, and they see Islam. In fact, Kohler says that Muslims were always seen as full proselytes of the Noahidic laws, whereas Christians were not because of the Trinity. So the Trinity is, the principle of the triad is, in Plato in the Timaeus talks about that. So the principle of the triad is a very powerful principle, and there are many, many trinities in the world that we see. So it is understandable.
I don't understand exactly why that constitutes such a stumbling block. I mean, and again, I'm trying to speak at least to some degree psychologically.
Well, if you read,
well,
sorry.
It seems to me that the idea of the Holy Ghost is allied with the idea of conscience. That voice that speaks from within. And then the idea of the Son element of the Trinity, that's the fact that divinity can reveal itself within a personality.
Well, I think,
and then the idea of God himself, the God the Father, that seems to me to be the idea that's most tightly associated with the Jewish idea of the Absolute and the Islamic idea of Allah.
Well, I don't think so, because if you read Meister Eckhart or even Aquinas on Trinity, but Eckhart, the Godhead, is infinite, cannot be embodied, is simple. There's no parts. So I think if you get into deep Catholic theology, you'll find that in the end, it is a type of unity. So the personas, and they are called personas in Latin, means mask in Latin. Right. It's a mask, right? And so for Muslims, Christ is a central figure, and Muslims do believe in a second coming of Christ, born of the virgin birth, but Christ is not divine. Christ is human. And you'll find that in the dual nature, not in the monophysite or the diaphysite traditions of Christianity that you find like in Coptic Christianity and some of the monophysites that believed in that Christ was purely divine, but in this idea that Christ is of a dual nature. So the Logos inheres, and that's a mystery. But this idea, Catholics never call, like evangelicals, they don't call on Christ as, when they pray, they call on God, the Father, through an intercession of Christ, which is, I think, very different from worshiping Christ as the Godhead. And I think it becomes very confusing even for a lot of Christians.
I think it is confusing, and the fact that it is one of the stumbling blocks to something approximating a union of the great Abrahamic traditions is quite a problem. And
well, we can agree on a lot of things. I mean, we certainly
yes.
we agree that there is a God, that he created us. We agree that the prophets were sent to warn people and to give them good news. And we agree that there's a day of judgment and people are going to be resurrected. I mean, those are some pretty strong things to base a sense of shared concern on. We certainly agree on family. We agree on the importance of raising children healthy. We all share the liberal arts tradition. Muslims, Christians, and Jews all share the tradition of the liberal arts, which is very, very important.
Maybe we could start in our efforts to move forward by concentrating on those things that unite us.